At our baby shower, my husband raised a toast, not to me but to his mother. "She's the one raising our child," he said. I was just the vessel. No one noticed when I quietly slipped out that evening. But the next morning, something landed on their doorstep that changed everything. "She's the one raising our child," Austin announced, raising his champagne flute toward his beaming mother instead of me. "Kelsey's just the vessel God chose." The room erupted in polite applause while something inside me shattered more completely than the glass I deliberately dropped at my feet. 7 months pregnant at my own baby shower, and I'd finally heard the truth they'd been whispering all along. But the suffocation began long before this moment of public humiliation. It started gradually, like a room slowly running out of oxygen, so subtle you don't notice until you're gasping for air. When I first took my position at Oak Ridge Middle School in Henderson, Ohio, population 8,742, I was Kelsey Watson, fresh out of college with big ideas about inspiring young minds. The brick schoolhouse with its squeaky floors and outdated textbooks became my second home. Between my classroom walls, decorated with student artwork and inspirational quotes, I found purpose in helping 7th graders navigate the awkward journey between childhood and adolescence. "Ms. Watson, will we ever use Romeo and Juliet in real life?" Zach Peterson asked during 3rd period. "You'll use the critical thinking skills we're developing," I replied with the certainty that came easily within these walls. "And maybe you'll understand people's motivations a little better." If only I'd applied those same skills to my own life. Perhaps I would have noticed the warning signs when Austin Miller, the handsome insurance agent from the family that practically founded Henderson, started showing interest in me at church functions. Perhaps I would have questioned why our dates always included his mother Jocelyn, or why decisions as simple as which movie to see required her approval. "Mom's opinion means everything to me," Austin had explained proudly, and I had found it endearing. A man who respected his mother must surely respect women in general, right? What a tragic misreading that had been. By the time we married, the pattern was established. Our honeymoon destination changed from the beach cottage I'd researched to the mountain resort Jocelyn preferred. Our house, just 3 blocks from hers, was furnished according to her specifications, not mine. Even our dinner conversations were dominated by Jocelyn's daily calls, with Austin excusing himself to speak privately with her while my food grew cold. "It's just how the Millers are," my colleague Barbara had commented when I mentioned it in the teacher's lounge. "That woman has had Austin wrapped around her finger since his father died. Everyone knows it. Everyone except me, apparently. The pregnancy was an accident. A beautiful one, I thought. The plus sign on the test had filled me with such hope. Perhaps a baby would finally make me central to Austin's life. Perhaps now I would matter more than his mother. Instead, my pregnancy accelerated my disappearance. The first prenatal appointment should have been magical. I'd imagined Austin holding my hand as we heard our baby's heartbeat for the first time. Instead, I lay on the examination table, surprised and uncomfortable as Jocelyn swept into the room behind my husband. "Mom was a nurse for 30 years, Austin explained to the obstetrician. "She knows what to look for." Dr. Richardson smiled politely. "I understand, but for privacy reasons." "Nonsense," Jocelyn interrupted. "Kelsey doesn't mind. Do you, dear?" 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. I felt my throat tighten, the familiar pressure of being outnumbered. "I suppose it's fine," I whispered, the words sticking like thorns. The heartbeat filled the room, fast and strong. Tears sprang to my eyes at the miraculous sound, but Jocelyn was already questioning the doctor about measurements and growth percentiles. "Is everything normal?" I managed to ask. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Richardson assured me, but she was looking at Jocelyn, not at me. By the next appointment, Jocelyn had compiled a list of questions and concerns. By the 3rd, she was insisting on changing my diet and exercise routine. By the 4th, she had convinced Austin that Dr. Richardson was too inexperienced, and they transferred my care to Dr. Myers, the older male doctor who had delivered Austin himself. "Miller babies need experienced hands," Jocelyn insisted. "Myers knows our family history." When I arrived for my 20-week scan, the receptionist handed me forms to sign for the transfer. I hadn't authorized it. I hadn't even been consulted. "Your mother-in-law took care of everything," the receptionist explained with a smile. "She said you were too busy with work to handle the details." I sat in the waiting room, forms clutched in my trembling hands as Austin and Jocelyn arrived together. They'd come directly from lunch, a lunch I hadn't been invited to. "Oh good, you're signing the transfer papers," Austin said, patting my shoulder. "Mom says Dr. Myers is the best in the state." "I liked Dr. Richardson," I said quietly. She listened to me. "Myers will know what's best for the baby," Jocelyn replied, her voice gentle but her eyes hard. "That's what matters now, isn't it? Not your comfort but what's best for the baby." The message was clear. My preferences were selfish. The baby, the Miller heir, was all that mattered. I was merely the vessel. Lisa Matthews noticed the change in me first. We'd started at Oak Ridge together 6 years ago, sharing lesson plans and lunch duty. Her classroom was across the hall from mine, and we often walked to the parking lot together after staff meetings. "You're quieter these days," she remarked one afternoon, studying my face. "Everything okay with the baby?" "The baby's fine," I replied automatically, the rehearsed answer to a question I'd been asked countless times. "I didn't ask about the baby," Lisa said gently. "I asked about you." Something in her tone, genuine concern, not the superficial interest of Austin's family friends, made my eyes sting with unexpected tears. I blinked them away quickly. "Just tired," I managed. "Pregnancy hormones, you know." Lisa wasn't fooled. "When's the last time you chose something for yourself, Kelsey? Something small even. Movie? A meal?" I couldn't remember. The realization struck me like a physical blow. My clothes were selected from options Jocelyn deemed appropriate. My groceries were purchased according to the list she provided for optimal fetal development. Even my classroom decorations had been influenced by her comment that bright colors can be so tacky in educational settings. "It's not that bad," I defended weakly. "Jocelyn means well." "My sister said the same thing about her mother-in-law," Lisa replied. "Now she needs permission to take her own kids to the park. Just be careful, okay? You're starting to disappear." Her words haunted me as I drove home, where I found Jocelyn in our nursery, directing the delivery men who were assembling a crib, a massive cherrywood piece I'd never seen before. "What happened to the white crib we picked out?" I asked, confused. Austin and I had spent a Saturday at the baby store, testing various models before selecting one together. "This was Austin's," Jocelyn explained, running her hand lovingly over the dark wood. "All Miller babies sleep in it. I've been saving it in my attic." "But we already ordered." "I canceled that flimsy modern thing," she interrupted. "This is solid craftsmanship. Much safer." I looked to Austin, who had appeared in the doorway behind me. "Did you know about this?" "Mom texted me at work," he said with a shrug. "Makes sense to save the money and use a family heirloom, right?" It wasn't about the money. The Miller family had more than enough, between Austin's successful insurance agency and Jocelyn's late husband's investments. It was about erasing another of my choices, another piece of me. The baby shower preparations became the final battlefield of my diminishing existence. What should have been my celebration was completely commandeered by Jocelyn. The invitations, pale blue, though we didn't know the baby's gender, announced a blessed addition to the Miller family without once mentioning my name. Shouldn't it say something about it being my shower? I asked Austin one evening, showing him the invitation. "Mom has a feeling it's a boy," he replied, barely looking up from his phone. "And everyone knows you're part of the Miller family." But was I? As the plans progressed, my suggestions were systematically dismissed. The venue I wanted, a charming tea house downtown, was vetoed in favor of the church hall where every Miller event had been held for generations. The guest list expanded to include Jocelyn's bridge club and church circle, women I'd met perhaps once at previous Miller gatherings. "I was thinking we could play that game where guests bring a book instead of a card," I ventured during one planning session at Jocelyn's dining room table. "To build the baby's library." "We already have all of Austin's childhood books in the attic," Jocelyn dismissed. "And I've ordered those lovely Miller family baby books, monogrammed of course." Austin smiled at his mother. "Always thinking ahead, Mom." Neither of them looked at me, sitting there with my unheard voice and my growing child. Neither noticed as another small piece of me disappeared into silence. The morning of the shower, I stood before my closet, eyeing the pale blue maternity dress Jocelyn had delivered the previous day. To match the decorations, the note had read, I'd planned to wear the yellow sundress my sister had sent, the one that made me feel pretty despite my swollen ankles and stretched skin. "You're not wearing that, are you?" Austin asked when I emerged in yellow. "Mom went to a lot of trouble to coordinate everything." "I like this dress," I said, my voice smaller than I intended. "My sister picked it specially." Austin's expression hardened. "It's just one day, Kelsey. Can't you think about what would make Mom happy for once?" For once. When had I ever done anything but accommodate Jocelyn? When had my preferences ever mattered? But as always, I relented, changing into the blue dress that made me look pale and washed out. As I fastened the pearl buttons at the collar, high and conservative, like all of Jocelyn's approved maternity wear, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Where was the passionate teacher who had once backpacked through Europe during summer break? Where was the woman who had strong opinions about literature and politics? Where was Kelsey Watson? I was disappearing breath by breath, choice by choice, day by day. The blue dress was just another piece of the suffocation, another thread in the fabric slowly wrapping around my throat. Little did I know that Austin's toast would be the final constriction, the moment when I would either break free or stop breathing altogether. The community center looked nothing like I remembered from town meetings and school fundraisers. Blue and silver streamers cascaded from the ceiling beams. Centerpieces featuring miniature baby carriages adorned each table. A banner reading, "Welcome Baby Miller," stretched across the front wall. Not Kelsey and Austin's baby, or even a simple baby shower. Just Baby Miller, as if I were merely an incubator for the family name. I stood awkwardly near the entrance as Jocelyn greeted guests, accepting hugs and congratulations meant for me. The blue dress felt tight around my collar, despite having been perfectly measured. Perhaps it was just the suffocation creeping up my neck. "Kelsey." A familiar voice cut through the practiced pleasantries. My sister Rachel barreled toward me, her dark curls bouncing with each step. She wrapped me in a fierce hug, then pulled back to study my face. "You look terrible." "Thanks," I managed a weak smile. 7 months pregnant will do that." "That's not what I mean." Her eyes narrowed. "What's with the funeral dress? And why is your mother-in-law playing hostess at your shower?" Before I could respond, Jocelyn appeared at my elbow, her hand gripping my arm just slightly too tight. "Rachel, so glad you could make it from Chicago." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Kelsey, Mrs. Peterson is asking about your due date. Why don't you mingle while I finish setting up the games?" It wasn't a suggestion. I squeezed Rachel's hand before being steered toward a cluster of Austin's family friends, women who'd known him since childhood but could barely remember my name. "There she is," Mrs. Peterson exclaimed, just glowing. Her eyes darted to my midsection rather than my face. "When are you due again, dear?" Mrs. Franklin asked, her head tilted in exaggerated interest. "September 15th, I replied. "Just in time for the Miller family reunion," someone remarked. "Jocelyn must be thrilled." I nodded automatically. I'd never been invited to plan for this reunion, though it had been mentioned countless times. Another family event where I would be present but not participating, visible but not seen. Rachel found me again as I examined the elaborate dessert table. "This is weird, Kels," she whispered. "Half these women don't even know you." "They're Austin's mother's friends," I explained. "It's important to her." "And what about what's important to you?" Rachel's directness had always been both her best and most uncomfortable quality. "Since when do you let someone else run your life?" "Since the day I said I do," I thought but didn't say. "It's complicated," I murmured instead. "It's not complicated. It's wrong." Rachel's eyes flashed. "You've changed, Kelsey. You're like a shadow of yourself." Before I could defend myself, or admit she was right, Jocelyn's voice carried through the community center. "Ladies, please take your seats. The games are about to begin." The first game was a quiz about Austin's childhood, questions no one but Jocelyn could answer correctly. Question 3, Jocelyn announced with theatrical flair. "What was baby Austin's first word?" Women scribbled guesses on blue note cards while I sat with my blank card. Austin had never told me his first word. It had never come up in our 3 years together. "The answer is Mama," Jocelyn declared proudly. "He was the most devoted little boy." Rachel rolled her eyes beside me. "Of course it was," she muttered. The games continued, all centered around Miller family history or Austin's preferences. Not a single question about me, the mother of the child being celebrated. By the third game, pin the diaper on the Miller family crest. Rachel had given up pretending to participate and was checking flight schedules on her phone. I can change my return to tomorrow if you want to leave with me, she whispered. This isn't normal, Kelsey. I can't just leave, I whispered back, though part of me desperately wanted to. Why not? These people don't even see you. Her words stung because they were true. I excused myself, needing a moment away from the suffocating cheerfulness, the constant refrain of Miller traditions, and just like when Austin was little. In the hallway outside the main room, I paused near the water fountain, taking deep breaths. Voices drifted from around the corner. Jocelyn's bridge club friends, taking a smoke break despite the no smoking signs. Already set up the nursery at her house, one was saying. Complete duplicate of everything they have at home. For when the baby stays at grandma's? Another asked. From what Jocelyn says, that'll be most of the time. Apparently the girl wants to go back to teaching right away. Selfish if you ask me. Jocelyn raised 3 children without ever leaving them with a sitter. Well, this generation, they think careers matter more than family. Thank goodness Jocelyn will be there to give that baby proper attention. My hands trembled as their words washed over me. Duplicate nursery? Most of the time? I'd mentioned wanting to return to teaching eventually. Not immediately, not full-time, just eventually. One casual comment, twisted into evidence of my inadequacy as a mother before my child was even born. I slipped back into the main room unnoticed. The gift table overflowed with blue-wrapped packages. Rachel caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I shook my head slightly, not ready to explain what I'd overheard. The side door opened and Austin entered to scattered applause. He'd been golfing with his father's old friends all morning, promising to make an appearance at some point. His presence immediately shifted the energy of the room. Jocelyn straightened her already perfect posture, her face glowing with pride as he kissed her cheek before making his way to me. You look nice, he said, touching my arm briefly before accepting a flute of champagne from a passing server. No kiss, no hand on my belly, no acknowledgement of our child beyond the obligatory comment. Time for the toast, Jocelyn announced, gesturing for everyone to gather. Austin moved to the front of the room, champagne raised. This was it, the moment when my husband would finally acknowledge me, would thank our friends and family for celebrating our child, would perhaps even express his love for me, the mother of his baby. I want to thank everyone for coming today, he began, his voice carrying across the room. Especially those who traveled from out of town. He mentioned his father's old college roommate by name. He thanked Mrs. Peterson for knitting a baby blanket. He acknowledged his boss for the generous paternity leave. But most of all, he continued, raising his glass higher, I want to thank my mother. My smile froze. Mom, without you none of this would be possible. You've been there every step of the way, helping us choose the right doctor, decorating the nursery, making sure everything is perfect for your grandson's arrival. Jocelyn beamed, pressing a hand to her heart. You're the one who's really going to be raising this child, Austin said, his words slicing through the room. Teaching him the Miller values, showing him what really matters in life. Kelsey's just the vessel God chose to bring him into the world. But you're his real guide. A chorus of "ohs" rippled through the crowd. Glass clinked against glass. Women dabbed at their eyes. Rachel's hand found mine under the table, squeezing so hard it hurt. No one looked at me. No one noticed my hands trembling in my lap. No one saw when I quietly stood and walked out the side door, through the parking lot and into my car. Tears blurred my vision as I drove home, the words echoing in my head. Just the vessel. Not the mother. Not the wife. Not even a person. Just a container valuable only for what I carried. For the first time I saw my marriage clearly, not what I'd hoped it would become but what it truly was. A slow, genteel burial of the woman I had been, the woman I still wanted to be. A beautiful coffin lined with Miller traditions and proper appearances, lowered inch by inch into the ground while I smiled and thanked everyone for attending. The house felt different when I pulled into the driveway, emptier somehow, though nothing had changed. My wedding photo smiled mockingly from the entryway table, Austin's arm around my shoulders, Jocelyn standing just behind us, her hand possessively on his other arm. How had I never noticed that detail before? How had I missed so many signs? I moved through the rooms like a ghost, touching furniture I'd never chosen, looking at paint colors I'd never picked. Nothing here belonged to me, not even the life growing inside me. The attic was the only place Jocelyn rarely ventured, too dusty for her designer slacks, too disorganized for her controlling nature. I climbed the narrow stairs, pull-cord light illuminating boxes stacked in neat rows. Most contained Austin's childhood treasures, carefully preserved by his mother, but in the far corner sat 3 cardboard boxes labeled Kelsey, College. My past life. The one where I had opinions and dreams and a voice. I opened the first box, fingers trembling as I lifted out my college yearbooks, old journals and photo albums. Memories of a woman who once stood her ground, who once believed her thoughts mattered. Who was she? Could I find her again? A smaller box caught my eye, tucked between 2 larger ones. My wedding mementos, cards, the dried bouquet, the garter I'd never actually thrown because Jocelyn thought it was tacky. I pulled it toward me, needing to remember if there had ever been real love between Austin and me, or if I'd been the vessel from the very beginning. Inside, beneath tissue paper and ribbon, lay a photo album I didn't recognize. The cover was expensive leather, embossed with the initials AM and AC. Austin Miller and, who? I'd been Kelsey Watson before our marriage. My heart stuttered as I opened to the first page. Austin, younger and more carefree than I'd ever seen him, arms wrapped around a stunning blonde. Austin and Allison, senior year, read the caption in flowing script. They looked happy. They looked in love. They looked like equals. I vaguely remembered an Allison from conversations early in our relationship. My college girlfriend, Austin had explained dismissively. Mom never thought she was good enough for me. I turned the pages slowly, watching their relationship unfold through carefully preserved photographs. Homecoming, Christmas, spring break in Cancun. The final photo showed them at graduation, eyes locked on each other rather than the camera. Tucked into the back cover was an envelope, the paper expensive and cream-colored. I hesitated, knowing I was crossing a line but unable to stop myself. Inside was a letter dated just 2 weeks before I met Austin at a church fundraiser. My dearest Austin, it began in elegant handwriting. Your mother's ultimatum breaks my heart, but I understand the position you're in. The Miller family business and name must come first. They always have. Perhaps someday you'll find the courage to make your own choices, but I cannot wait forever while you try to please a woman who will never be satisfied with anyone you choose. I will always love you, but I deserve someone who puts me first. Goodbye. Allison. My hands shook as I processed what I was reading. Jocelyn had forced their breakup. Austin had chosen his mother over the woman he loved. And then he'd met me, the agreeable, accommodating middle school teacher who didn't challenge him, who tried so hard to fit into the Miller mold. Had he ever loved me at all? Or had I simply been the acceptable replacement, the vessel for continuing the Miller line? The photo album slipped from my fingers, pages splaying across the attic floor. As I bent to gather them, a phone fell out, an old flip phone I didn't recognize. Curiosity overwhelmed propriety as I clicked it open, surprised to find it still had battery life. Text messages filled the screen. Dozens between Austin and Allison, dated during the first 6 months of our marriage. My stomach clenched as I scrolled, reading messages no wife should ever discover. Miss you, Austin had written 3 weeks after our wedding. Today was unbearable. Another Sunday dinner with Mom watching my every move. Then why stay? Allison had responded. You know I still love you. It's complicated. The business, the house, everything is tied to Mom's approval. And now Kelsey might be pregnant. My finger froze on the screen. That message was dated exactly when I'd first suspected my pregnancy, before I'd even told Austin. How had he known? I scrolled further, the truth revealing itself in sickening fragments. Mom's thrilled about the baby, Austin had written. Says it's the first step in securing the Miller legacy. And Kelsey? Allison had asked. She's just happy I'm happy. The messages continued for months. Austin complaining about marriage, reminiscing about their relationship, even planning a meeting that thankfully never happened when Allison backed out. The final exchange was dated around my 4th month of pregnancy. I can't do this anymore, Allison had written. You're married. You're having a baby. Let me move on. I know, Austin had replied. Mom says I need to focus on my family now anyway. She's got everything under control. Everything under control. The words echoed in my head as pieces clicked into place. My easy acceptance into the Miller family despite not coming from their kind of people. Jocelyn's immediate attachment to me, so different from her treatment of Allison. The constant reminders of Miller traditions, Miller expectations, Miller control. I hadn't been chosen for love. I'd been selected for compliance. The room spun around me as 7 months of pregnancy hormones collided with the shattered remains of my marriage. Stumbling to my feet, I made my way downstairs to the kitchen, bracing myself against the counter. The baby kicked sharply as if sensing my distress. My phone lay on the counter where I'd left it hours earlier. With trembling fingers I made the first call. Rachel? It's me. Yes, I'm okay. I swallowed hard. Actually no, I'm not okay. Can I come stay with you for a while? Tomorrow morning. My sister didn't ask questions, just gave immediate agreement. My couch is yours for as long as you need it. Do you want me to come get you? No, I'll drive myself. There's something I need to do first. The second call was to my doctor. Not Dr. Myers but Dr. Richardson, whose number I still had saved. I need a paternity test, I said without preamble when she answered. One that can be done before birth. There are risks, she warned. And it's expensive if insurance doesn't cover it. I don't care about either. How quickly can it be done? The third call was to a lawyer whose card Lisa had pressed into my hand months ago, when she'd first noticed my disappearing act. Just in case, she'd whispered. I need divorce papers drawn up immediately, I told the answering service. And I need to know my rights regarding an unborn child if the father isn't actually the father. With each call my voice grew stronger, my resolve clearer. By the time I hung up after the third conversation, the woman who had meekly worn the blue dress that morning was gone. I moved through the house with newfound purpose, gathering only what truly belonged to me. Clothes I'd bought before marriage, books from my teaching days, the few pieces of jewelry from my family. Everything fit into 2 suitcases, a testament to how little of me existed in this house. In the bedroom I carefully removed my wedding ring, placing it on Austin's nightstand. Beside it I left a note with 5 simple words. The vessel has emptied itself. Let them figure out what had landed on their doorstep in the morning. Dawn broke over the Miller house as I drove away, my 2 suitcases and a small box of mementos tucked in the back seat of my sedan. The GPS was set for Rachel's apartment in Chicago, but I had one stop to make first. The courier service opened at 7 a.m., and I was their first customer, paperwork and package ready. Guaranteed delivery by 9 a.m.? I confirmed, paying the rush fee without hesitation. Yes, ma'am. Someone will need to sign for it, the clerk replied, affixing the necessary labels to my manila envelope. There will be someone there, I assured him, picturing the Sunday morning scene I was missing. Austin stumbling down for coffee that Jocelyn would have waiting, their peaceful routine unfolding without a thought for the empty space I'd left behind. Meanwhile, across town, that peaceful routine was shattering apart. Jocelyn let herself into her son's house at 8:15 a.m., grocery bags filled with ingredients for her special Sunday breakfast casserole. The baby shower had been a triumph. Everyone commenting on her impeccable planning, her thoughtful touches, the perfect execution. If Kelsey had been a bit quiet toward the end, well, pregnant women were often overwhelmed by emotion. Austin, she called out, setting the bags on the kitchen counter. I brought everything for breakfast. And the leftover cake from yesterday. No answer. Frowning, she made her way upstairs. Austin was usually up by now, especially after golfing. The exercise always reset his internal clock. Perhaps Kelsey wasn't feeling well and he was tending to her. The master bedroom door stood ajar. Jocelyn pushed it open without knocking. She never did, not in her son's home. Austin, are you? He sat on the edge of the unmade bed, still in yesterday's clothes, staring at something in his hand. At his mother's voice he looked up, face ashen. She's gone, he said hoarsely. Kelsey left. Jocelyn moved swiftly to his side, eyes darting around the room. The closet door hung open, revealing gaps where Kelsey's clothes had been. Her dresser drawers were partially pulled out, clearly emptied in haste. What do you mean, gone? Jocelyn demanded, though the evidence was clear enough. Where would she go in her condition? Austin held out his palm, revealing Kelsey's wedding ring and a small note card. Jocelyn snatched both, reading the 5 words with growing indignation. The vessel has emptied itself. She scoffed. What nonsense is this? After everything we've done for her. I don't know, Mom, Austin said, his voice unnaturally flat. I came home late last night and assumed she was asleep. I was out with the guys after the shower. I crashed in the guest room so I wouldn't wake her. I didn't even check on her until just now. Well, call her. She can't have gone far, not 7 months pregnant. Jocelyn began pacing the room, mentally cataloging which of their acquaintances might be harboring her ungrateful daughter-in-law. Austin held up his phone. Straight to voicemail. I've tried 6 times. This is ridiculous, Jocelyn huffed. Pregnancy hormones, obviously. She'll come crawling back once she realizes she can't manage on her own. Remember how helpless she was picking out maternity clothes. The doorbell rang, interrupting her tirade. Austin seemed rooted to the bed, so Jocelyn marched downstairs, composing herself. No need for neighbors to suspect anything amiss in the Miller household. A courier stood on the porch, electronic signature pad extended. Delivery for Austin Miller. Needs a signature. I'll sign for him, Jocelyn said briskly, scrawling her name across the screen. The courier handed over a thick manila envelope and departed with professional indifference, already checking his next delivery on his handheld device. Jocelyn examined the envelope as she walked back upstairs. No return address, just Austin's name typed on a standard label. A sense of foreboding crept up her spine. There's a package for you, she announced, entering the bedroom where Austin remained motionless. Probably those golf club covers you ordered. He took the envelope without interest, turning it over in his hands before finally ripping open the seal. 3 separate documents slid out onto the bedspread. The first was printed on medical letterhead, bold text proclaiming prenatal paternity test results across the top. Austin's eyes widened as he scanned the content, color draining from his face. What is it? Jocelyn demanded, snatching the paper from his trembling hands. She read quickly, her perfectly maintained composure crumbling with each line. Non-paternity confirmed. 0% probability. Conclusive exclusion. The words blurred together as rage built within her chest. She cheated on you, Jocelyn spat, throwing the paper down. That whole innocent act, that yes, Jocelyn, and whatever you think is best routine, all while she was carrying another man's child. Austin sat frozen, staring at nothing. Mechanically, he picked up the second document. Legal papers, pages of dense text with yellow sign here, tabs affixed throughout. Divorce filing already signed by Kelsey Watson Miller, dated yesterday. She planned this, Jocelyn realized aloud, grabbing the papers. The little snake was just waiting for the right moment to humiliate you, to humiliate us. The third document was thinner than the others, headed Voluntary Termination of Parental Rights and Responsibilities. Austin finally found his voice as he skimmed the content. She's waiving any claim to child support or involvement from me, he said, confusion evident in his tone. Why would she do that if she wanted to trap me with another man's baby? To avoid questions, Jocelyn snapped, pacing the room again. To prevent us from demanding a proper investigation. Who knows what else she's been hiding? I never trusted her, not really. Too agreeable, too willing to go along with everything. No backbone. Now we know why. A bitter laugh escaped Austin's throat. You thought she was too agreeable? You've been orchestrating her life since the day we met. I have been preparing her to be a proper Miller wife, Jocelyn corrected sharply. Obviously I failed. She never had the right character for this family. She snatched the final document, scanning it with narrowed eyes. Her outrage faltered momentarily as recognition dawned. The custody waiver was nearly identical to one she herself had drafted early in Kelsey's pregnancy. Just in case you ever decide motherhood isn't for you, she told her daughter-in-law with a thin smile. It had been a test, a way to gauge Kelsey's commitment. The young woman had seemed hurt by the suggestion, but had said nothing as usual. Now those same legal phrases stared back at Jocelyn, twisted into a weapon against her son. We'll fight this, she declared, gathering the papers into a pile. I know excellent lawyers. She can't just walk away, pregnant or not. The humiliation alone. Humiliation. Austin repeated, a strange etch to his voice. You're worried about what people will think? Of course. The Miller name means something in this town. Your father built a legacy that I'm now supposed to continue with a proper Miller heir, Austin finished bitterly. Except there is no Miller heir, is there? Just some other man's baby that my wife has been carrying while I've been. He trailed off, face suddenly flushing. While you've been what? Jocelyn demanded. Austin shook his head, reaching for his phone again. Nothing. I need to find her. Talk to her. About what? She's made her choice, Austin. She's discarded you, discarded us. After everything we've done for her. But Austin wasn't listening. He was scrolling through his contacts, stopping at a name Jocelyn couldn't see. His thumb hovered over the screen before he abruptly tossed the phone aside, burying his face in his hands. This is her fault, not yours, Jocelyn insisted, sitting beside him, hand on his back. We'll get through this together just like we always have. Mother and son. Austin lifted his head, eyes red-rimmed but suddenly clear. Do you remember what I said in my toast yesterday? Of course. It was beautiful, acknowledging everything I've done to prepare for this baby. I called her just the vessel, Austin said quietly. Not the mother of my child. Not my wife. Just the vessel. And you smiled. Everyone smiled. Jocelyn waved dismissively. It was a figure of speech. And clearly accurate given what we now know. No. It was the truth. That's how we treated her. How I treated her. Like she didn't matter except for what she could provide. He picked up the paternity test results again, staring at the clinical wording that had shattered his world. Maybe this is exactly what I deserve. The doorbell rang again, interrupting whatever response Jocelyn might have made. Her perfect Sunday morning, her perfect family image, her perfect control, all crumbling with each new development. Whoever stood on that doorstep couldn't possibly bring anything but more chaos to the unraveling Miller legacy. The second doorbell ring brought Jocelyn to her feet, composure fracturing as she marched downstairs. Austin followed slowly, the documents still clutched in his hand. Who else knew? How fast had word spread? But it wasn't a curious neighbor or concerned friend waiting on the porch. It was Jake Sullivan, Kelsey's high school boyfriend, looking uncomfortable in pressed khakis and a button-down shirt. Is Kelsey home? He asked, shifting his weight nervously. She called me this morning, asked me to meet her here. Jocelyn's eyes narrowed dangerously. Did she now? How convenient. Austin stepped forward, recognition dawning as he studied the man before him. Jake had moved back to Henderson about a year ago to take over his father's hardware store. Austin had seen him around town occasionally but never given him much thought. Now, looking at Jake's sandy hair and blue eyes, a sick feeling twisted in his stomach. She's not here, Austin said flatly. But I think you and I need to talk. 30 minutes later, Jake sat at the kitchen table, face ashen as he processed everything Austin had told him. I had no idea, he said, running a hand through his hair. We dated briefly when she first moved back to town before she met you. But we ended things. I never thought. He looked up suddenly. Where is she now? That's none of your concern, Jocelyn interrupted sharply. You've done quite enough already. Jake met her gaze directly, something hardening in his expression. With all due respect, ma'am, if that baby is mine, it's very much my concern. A baby needs a father who's prepared to be one, Austin said quietly, surprising both Jocelyn and Jake. Are you? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. 2 towns over, I sat in Rachel's apartment, phone pressed to my ear as I listened to Jake's stunned reaction. I never knew, he repeated for the 3rd time. Kelsey, you have to believe me. I do, I assured him, hand resting protectively on my belly. That's why I called you as soon as I found out. You deserve to know. Do you need anything? Money? Help with doctor's bills? His immediate offer of support, so different from Austin's delegated concern, made my throat tight with emotion. Just time, I managed. I'm staying with my sister while I figure things out. Can I see you? Jake asked hesitantly. I'd like to talk in person if that's okay. I agreed to meet him the following weekend at a cafe halfway between our locations. As I hung up, Rachel appeared with 2 cups of tea, settling beside me on her worn couch. So he took it well? She asked. Better than I expected, I admitted. No accusations, no demands. Just concern. Unlike your in-laws, I'm guessing. Rachel's expression darkened. Have they tried calling again? My phone had been buzzing periodically all day. Austin, his mother, even a few church friends undoubtedly recruited for the search. I'd answered only Jake's call. They'll figure it out eventually, I said. The paternity test was conclusive. There's nothing to discuss. Rachel studied my face. Are you really okay? This is a lot to process in one day. Was I okay? My marriage was over. My life had been upended. I was 7 months pregnant with a child whose father was essentially a stranger now. By any rational measure, I should have been falling apart. But underneath the turmoil and uncertainty, a peculiar sense of peace had begun to settle. For the first time in 3 years, I was making my own choices. My own voice was the only one in my head. I think I will be, I answered honestly. For the first time in a long time. The ripple effect through Henderson was immediate and far-reaching. By Monday morning, Austin couldn't enter his insurance office without feeling eyes tracking his movements. By Tuesday, the whispers had solidified into versions of the story that grew more elaborate with each retelling. Lisa called me that evening, her voice low and concerned. You wouldn't believe what they're saying at school, Kelsey. Jocelyn's telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown, that you abandoned Austin because of pregnancy hormones. And what do people believe? I asked, surprised by how little I cared about the answer. That's the thing, Lisa said, a smile evident in her voice. No one's buying it. Mrs. Peterson from the church guild actually told Jocelyn to her face that she'd seen how they treated you at the shower. Said it was unchristian and cruel. More calls followed in the coming days. Barbara from the English department, my dentist, even Austin's cousin Melissa, who confessed she'd always found Jocelyn terrifying. Each conversation revealed another crack in the perfect Miller family image, another person who had seen what I couldn't, that I had been slowly erased. 3 weeks after leaving Henderson, I found a small apartment in Riverside, a charming town about 40 minutes away. Close enough to maintain my doctor's appointments, far enough to build a fresh start. The school superintendent there, upon hearing I was looking for work, offered me a position for the fall semester, contingent on my recovery after the baby arrived. We need good English teachers, she said matter-of-factly. Your references are excellent. The rest is just life happening. Jake drove over to help me move in, assembling furniture and hanging curtains with a quiet efficiency. We were awkward around each other at first, our teenage relationship a distant memory, the current circumstances surreal. But as weeks passed, a tentative friendship formed, built on cautious honesty and shared anticipation. I don't expect anything from you, I told him one evening as we sorted through baby clothes my sister had sent. You didn't ask for this. Neither did you, he pointed out, folding a tiny yellow onesie with surprising tenderness. But I want to be involved, Kelsey. Whatever that looks like. When Sarah Elizabeth Watson arrived on a warm September morning, 2 weeks early and impatient to greet the world, Jake was there in the waiting room. My sister Rachel held my hand through the delivery, her strength anchoring me through each contraction. She's perfect, the nurse announced, placing my daughter on my chest. 10 fingers, 10 toes, and eyes that, even squinting and new, were unmistakably like her father's. Jake's face when he first held her was a study in wonder and terror. She's so small, he whispered, carefully supporting her head. But strong, I assured him, watching as her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. Like her mother. 6 months later, as spring returned to Ohio, Austin requested a meeting. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in a neutral town, somewhere neither of us was known. I arrived first, settling Sarah into her stroller before ordering a cappuccino. She was growing quickly, babbling happily and reaching for everything in sight. When Austin walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the polished insurance agent in pressed slacks and monogrammed shirts. His hair was longer, his expression more open. Most strikingly, he was alone. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, taking the seat across from me. His eyes lingered on Sarah, taking in her features with a bittersweet smile. "She's beautiful, Kelsey." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by the absence of anger or resentment in my voice. Those emotions had burned themselves out months ago, leaving only a calm clarity. "I sold the agency," Austin said abruptly. "Moved to Columbus. I'm going back to school. Architecture like I always wanted before." He trailed off, both of us knowing who had redirected that dream. "That's wonderful," I said, meaning it. "And your mother?" A complicated expression crossed his face. We're working on boundaries. Therapy helps. Turns out when your wife leaves and half the town sides with her, it forces some self-reflection. I nodded, watching Sarah as she batted at the toys hanging from her stroller. I'm glad, Austin. Really. I wanted to apologize, he continued, voice lower now. For everything. For calling you what I called you at the shower. For not seeing what was happening. For not being strong enough to break the pattern. I could have spoken up sooner, I acknowledged. But I don't think either of us was ready to hear the truth then. We talked for nearly an hour, the conversation easier than I would have imagined possible. No accusations, no defenses, just two people acknowledging a shared failure and separate paths forward. As he prepared to leave, Austin hesitated. Can I ask you something? That night when you found out about the baby, about Jake, were you devastated? Or relieved? I considered the question carefully. Both, I answered honestly. Devastated that what I thought we had wasn't real. Relieved that I had a reason to leave that would stick. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. The vessel emptied itself, he murmured, recalling my note. But really, you filled yourself back up. As I watched him walk away, I realized he was right. My revenge hadn't been in the paternity revelation or the public humiliation of the Millers. It hadn't even been in reclaiming my independence. My true liberation had been finding myself again, the woman who had been systematically erased, silenced, and diminished. She had been there all along, waiting for me to remember her strength. Sarah gurgled happily in her stroller, reaching for me with complete trust and love. I lifted her into my arms, breathing in her sweet baby scent. Come on, little one, I whispered. Let's go home. Our life. Our choices. No vessel, just a woman and her daughter, strong enough to shape their own story. If this story of quiet liberation had you rooting for Kelsey, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when she left her wedding ring with that perfect note. The vessel has emptied itself. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more powerful stories about finding your voice. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.